Okay, the Green Party has snookered itself and has no idea how to address the Benjamin Doyle controversy. The death threats excuse is a sideshow. It's now week 2, and the Greens will keep him away from Parliament indefinitely. He can't do his job. The Greens, I think, look idiotic defending him, and they need to talk him into resigning. Does it get any worse? And social media billionaires need checking. They're changing civilization for the worst. Can we stop them? And 500,000 people need food parcels every month in New Zealand. How can we turn this around? Can we, in fact, turn it around? And what's happened to us? You're with the Editor-in-Chief. Let's go.
Are we paying these people to front up, or are we paying them to fly to Wellington to eat their lunch? Should you really lose your career for refusing to take part in a 90-minute lesson about Māori culture? This government doesn't actually have any idea how to get economic growth. Show us what you made of, Prime Minister.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Duncan Garner. Welcome. And as I always say, please subscribe. Helps us stay around. Really helpful. So please do that. Press the button. Before I get into the Greens and talk about food parcels, I want to say this. 10 years ago, many of you will know, I came off all forms of social media due to losing myself down a rabbit hole, getting aggro, losing my way, losing my freedom, my privacy, just losing everything. 10 years later, I use it really only to post to you guys, to connect with you. And so we use the platforms, you see. But it's more dangerous than ever, this stuff. Look at how addicted we are to it. I go to the gym, and kids can't do a session without checking their phones at the end of each set of exercises, sometimes during it. Look at the Netflix series Adolescence. I agree with what Australia's done, banning it for under 16s. We must do the same. We are the guinea pigs. Our kids' innocence has been broken in many ways by this international ram raid of their minds and souls and brains by these social media giants. They've made billions of bucks and rewired and reprogrammed society. We will look back at this era, and I think we'll ask, where were we? And what did we do? And why didn't we do something? I say this because David Parker, Labour MP, deep thinker, was on Q&A at the weekend and summed it up brilliantly and spoke truth to power. One of the best things, I think, most honest things I think an MP has said in years. Listen to this.
We've made a mistake in the West. We've allowed those platforms to be irresponsible. And, you know, they're greedy owners who are so selfish are ruining civilization, in my opinion. They're ruining democracies around the world. And I know that's quite a strong statement, but I believe it to be true. The youth suicide rate, mental health problems with young people, people getting ripped off all of their savings from scams, you know, and those companies are doing nothing to prevent that. In fact, they're selling advertising services to the people that are doing it. There are death threats against politicians. I saw on the news the other day that the Auckland mayors had to have more security because of some of these threats against him. This is appalling. Lies, defamation, theft of content, and at its heart is the fact that these companies are protected from any liability for the dangerous product that they sell. And I think that until the world deals with something like that, or maybe what the Australians are doing with under 16-year-olds not being able to get a social media account. Until that, the lies that we see pervading the world will prevail over truth, and we risk demagoguery and dictatorship, because dictatorships thrive on propaganda, not truth.
It was good, wasn't it? Good on you, David. Well said. Now watch us do nothing as a result. Anyway, to the Greens I go, and the Benjamin Doyle issue, it hangs over them. Like a massive cloud on a rainy day, it just sits on top of them. It's bad for the Greens, and there's only one way out. Only one way to resolve this, and Doyle must resign. So let's go.
It's the Slam Dunk.
So the Greens, I reckon, have skewered themselves, snookered themselves, call it a spectacular own goal, but they have little option but to keep Bussy Boy, Benjamin Doyle MP, away from Parliament this week. And not because one death threat's been referred to the police. It's not about that at all. Politicians come to work every day with death threats swirling. I mean, Jacinda Ardern around the country with numerous death threats swirling. It is a distraction, folks, in an attempt to buy time, because make no mistake, this embarrassment can only be lanced by Doyle resigning as a list MP. I can't see it resolving itself any other way. That's why they've sent him into hiding. Doyle needs to resign. Simple. And even then, the Green Party and its leadership will need to address some serious questions about its selection processes and vetting and so forth. This is not about Winston or the media. Stay focused on Doyle and the Greens' unwavering support for him. Chloe Swarbrick, I think, has made a fool of herself in the way that she patronised straight voters for saying we simply do not understand the gay world. And don't understand the language they use, like Bussy. We simply couldn't understand the context, she said. She rolled Middle New Zealand. Yeah, she eye-rolled Middle New Zealand. She went, Does it get any more arrogant than that? Doyle's resignation and his departure from Parliament is the only way the Greens can immediately take the heat out of the issue. It's why Darlene Tunner had to go. Sometimes an MP becomes so embroiled in the indefensible that they can't carry on. So the longer he remains in Parliament, the more attention he draws, the more intense the issue becomes because you've got to lance the boil. But the Greens are a collective. The members make the decisions, not the MPs. So any resignation decision could take time and could go to a vote. They'll keep him away this week and buy some time by having a 3-week recess, which starts next week. Many a party and MP have been saved by the bell, saved by the recess. So 3 weeks coming up. So for now, and until they can get him to resign, they will keep him away from Parliament. And surely the 2.5 leaders, well, the 2 half leaders, aren't they? 2 half leaders of the Greens have worked out their defence of him. I think their defence of him looks delusional. And it looks awfully out of touch with even Rainbow and Green voters. I've been inundated with emails from openly gay folk and Green voters who say Chloe Swarbrick's arrogant dismissal of questions and her staunch defence of Doyle was not representative of their values, and they would now walk away from the party, they told me. Could Swarbrick have got this any more wrong? Surely any gay man using his own child in pictures referring to bussy, a rainbow word for men's anus, is plain inappropriate and wrong. And Swarbrick has not even said that. Why can't she say that? The red lights, the warning lights, the alarm bells should have been deafening, but not for a party that, in their attempt to embrace every minority that walks the planet, they overlook the obvious. When does something just not seem right? And the Greens' ability to remain and stay tone deaf just stretches on. They're standing by their defence of Doyle. They remain of the view that Winston's evil, the media's evil for raising it, and poor old bussy boy Benny is the long-suffering victim in all this. No, he's not. The Greens absolutely have the right to choose how they defend this, but to put him in his plight ahead of the wider considerations of the Green Party and its survival is without question, I think, poor leadership. And it brings into serious question the wider reputation, integrity and values of the Greens. What are you voting for when you vote Green? That's now a legitimate question, given their unwavering support of Doyle so far. He's deleted 52 posts. Doesn't that tell you that he has something to hide? Not in Chloe Swarbrick's eyes. Chloe Swarbrick made a terrible mistake last week, making this about everybody else and protecting Doyle. Now they need it to disappear to somehow stop it damaging the wider party any further than it already has. The Greens need to somehow get Doyle to resign quickly. They need to do a mea culpa and say they got it wrong. Then they need to look at how Doyle was selected and what did the party know. They need to humble themselves, but humility wouldn't go astray. They're not patron saints. They're not beyond reproach. They're just MPs, like other MPs. They're MPs. They're not paragons of virtue. They're just like other parties, but they do feel the need to protect their own. But that's the worst call they could make. Cut and run. Now, if Doyle had wider Green interests at heart, he would have done so by now. The Greens' leadership is now cornered, and I ask the question, what can they do? What will they do next?
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Okay, yeah, because he's sort of stuffed, Isaac, isn't he? I mean, what do you do with that guy? Bring him back in front of the cameras and lights in the media?
I mean, they've definitely painted themselves into a corner. Is what I'll say about that. They've come out with this very, very odd defence, which is it looks very scathing for the Green Party. Just like to be, it's just weird. It's weird.
You're
to
a young
think
voter.
About, and I think
you're a young voter.
David.
You're a young voter.
I think. Yes,
does it tempt you? Do they tempt you? I mean, did you look at this going, what the hell?
No, yeah, exactly, because I think David Farrar said it best last week. He said that the Green Party have made it about who he is, not about what he's done. And I think that's a very good thing, and that's just wrong, obviously, because it's essentially saying that because of who he is, he gets a get out of jail free card for doing something incredibly inappropriate and just weird and potentially dangerous as well. Like this should be getting looked into significantly more.
Well said. And in whose world is this okay? And yet David Farrar, you're right about Farrar. He did say they've made it about who he is. It's not about who he is. It's about the actions. Like the Māori Party with the Privileges Committee. You don't have a lower level of accountability because you're Māori. You're the same as everyone else in the Parliament. Anyway. Yep. Well said, mate. Right, so the New Zealand Food Network, the NZFN, was set up just 5 years ago to make sure that food we normally dumped was saved, salvaged and distributed to those communities most in need. It made sense, right? Don't go dumping it at the dump site. What a waste of food. But the demand's been astonishing, and I ask the question, why can't New Zealanders feed themselves and their families? Have we really become that poor? Have our costs of living become so high compared to wages? Because this is what the demand shows us, and I think we've gone into this new zone. So the food networks, they have many, many food hubs across the country. They're now feeding over 500,000 people per month. 500,000 people per month get these food parcels. Now, food prices, as we know, have soared. So has the demand for food parcels, and the network is now really struggling and doesn't have enough food. Hence, the parcels they hand out are now smaller, and they're turning for the first time some people away. For instance, they gave away 13 million kilograms of food in the last half of 2024. That is huge. Now they're struggling for stock levels. This comes as food prices are reported to have increased by about 2.5%. In the last 12 months, 2.5%, probably more. This indicates that although food support has increased nationwide, the food hubs are still struggling to distribute the same amount of stock, resulting in decreasing sizes of food parcels and all those things. 30% of their recipients have never asked for help before. 95% of all people say they are asking for help because the cost of living has so dramatically risen they can't keep up. Gavin Findlay is the CEO and joins us now. Gavin, g'day, nice to see you.
Kia ora, thanks, Duncan.
You're doing great. You're very welcome. You're doing great work. So you're 5 years deep now, 64 hubs. How much food do you get donated a year to hand out?
So we're tasked with doing about 7,500 tonnes, 29-30 tonnes a day of food, or 16,000 pallets, depending on kind of what you get. So
all this stuff, where did it go beforehand? So you guys were set up during COVID.
Yep.
It's a great enterprise. It was needed. You guys said to the government, hey, if you don't do this, we're in trouble.
Yeah, we kind of saw when I was taken on as the CEO of Kiwi Harvest, which is one of our hubs, the largest food regionalised food rescue organisation in the country. One of the remits was to look at a national solution, and so it's kind of going through the early stages of that, and then COVID hit, and we kind of took one step back and went, shit, this is going to have a big impact on our sector, because people getting laid off, unemployment, there's just going to be so many people really struggling. So we very quickly put a really good team together, industry experts and our own knowledge, pitched to the government to say, you need to fund this now.
Yes.
So on the 3rd of May, we kind of got the go-ahead in the budget.
Yeah.
And then the next 12 weeks was finding a premises, refitting a premises, getting some office space in that premises fitted out, finding personnel, designing IT systems, designing operational systems.
It's phenomenal, isn't
working with food hubs, working with food donors.
Yeah.
And 12 weeks later, we started.
Did you think, which is an astonishing turnaround? If you didn't have COVID, it wouldn't have happened that quickly. We would have dragged it on and on and on. But so the need was there. It's great.
100%.
Yeah.
There was definitely the need. I think it just crystallised it into a set of conditions that the government were, say, backed into a corner, but went, actually, I think you're right.
Yeah.
We do need to get in behind this for the right reasons. COVID just brought that all together.
No-brainer. Did you think it would be for a certain period, or did you think it was going to be for COVID only, or did you think it would carry on? Where you are now are at, which is the most need you've ever seen.
Yep.
Did you think you get to this point, or did you think it'd be all over by now?
I never thought it would be all over, because previously we were the only country in the world that didn't actively fund our sector. There was always a need, and there was always other programs that people could access money to buy food. But in terms of the food rescue space, the vast volumes of food that are surplus, to translate that into supporting in the social needs, that was never done.
It was ad hoc, wasn't it? It was all very ad hoc and bitsy.
But it was bitsy done by business
Yes.
and the food rescue sector, not by government.
Right. So you now get all this food. Where was it going beforehand?
A mixture of some into the community, to be fair, through some existing relationships, but a lot of it was just dumped to landfill or just left in the field to rot, or left on the vine.
I find it criminal. I don't know if it's my upbringing or whatever, but to just let stuff rot or to throw it out. Especially in times of need, it seems so wrong.
You kind of think 99% of the people who acquire food go to a supermarket or a dairy, get their food, go home, cook it, eat it, end of process.
Yes.
That's all they think about. No idea that 30% of all, certainly grown food and processed and produce, never even makes it to market.
Yeah, so it gets... What happens to that food? When it doesn't make it to market, it goes to you or goes to the dump?
Yeah, so what we're trying to ensure is the vast majority of that comes through us, because fruit and veggies is a fantastic, nutritious... as a country, we spend a lot of money growing really, really good quality produce.
And we spend a lot of money not putting it to market.
Correct. So the
1 in 3 apples.
Yep. So about 30% of everything doesn't make it to market. And that's not just a New Zealand thing. That's generally accepted around the world.
Right. It's because of the way it looks.
Yep. So predominantly the you and me's of this world who go into a supermarket, we pick and choose. If a little blemish here, or a banana's got a couple of black spots on it, not forgetting about what's underneath in the nutritional element. It's how it looks.
Yeah, we've been programmed, haven't
nuts.
we? We've been programmed.
aesthetics equals quality.
Yeah, which is a lie.
It's fundamentally way outside the concept of being a human and needing food to nourish your body to eat. If you suddenly go, I don't like the look of that, so I'm not having it.
I will starve rather than eat that crooked banana.
Yeah, there's no way I'm going to cut that little bit of blemish out of the apple.
You put it in a smoothie. So the need now, how would you describe the need now? Because we've been through this period of economic decline. We've been through a period of low growth or no growth. In fact, we've been contracting as a country in terms of this recession, which means that people are doing it much tougher. We've seen all the stats. How much worse is it now compared to, say, a year or two ago?
It's not getting any better, let's say. There was a ramp up to COVID, and like you said in your intro, we thought it was maybe going to come down, but suddenly the economic environment around the world started to, affect those that it affects. There's many people that are not affected. The uber wealthy will never be touched. But for 90% of the world's citizenry, the environment now is really, really challenging. That has meant that about 30% of people who are coming to our food hubs are coming for the first time.
Yeah, and I'm noticing from the work I do and see and people I talk to that people who are working are going to these hubs for the first time, working families.
Absolutely. So they may have exhausted their own resources, whether that be savings or family or wider network. And suddenly it's a big thing, I think, for people to go, I need to get some help. And food, in particular with food, you would think that, food is one of these things that you need. You can't survive without it, let's say. You can survive without a phone.
Yeah, well, no, I'm sure they can these days.
That's another thing. Yep. But you cannot survive without food.
You need food, you need water, and you need shelter and transport.
Yep.
In no particular order, but the food and water is shelter.
Food, air, and water is what we need as human beings to exist.
So we pump tens of billions of dollars through our welfare system and through accommodation supplements and food passes, all sorts of things. Yet people are still in need, despite that, and we're going backwards. Our wages haven't kept up with cost of living. Cost of living has been excruciatingly high for people, and now the middle classes are feeling it.
They are, because the dollar isn't going as far.
Yeah.
I think around the world, they use the McDonald's, how much is the McDonald's in each different parts of the world and versus the 70s and 80s. Proportionately, as a part of your discretionary spend, you're actually buying less and less and less. The ability is to buy less and less and less. Power, for example, I think it's kind of well known that the relative costs of power are just
look at rent though. Look at our rents.
Way out of kilter in relation to your disposable income.
So to me, there doesn't appear to be a solution in this. The only thing that's going to happen is your organisation is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and have more demands put on it.
Yeah. If I had a solution, I would enact it and I would make it happen. I think in general, the creep in how we live, for food, for example, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of years ago, you used to eat what you grew and you used to grow what you eat, and you could get everything within your locality. That's where villages and tribes kind of grew up in areas where they could feed themselves.
We've lost this. So
we're now 75 or 80% urbanised in New Zealand. So you can't have your back garden or, generally go out hunting and lots of people do, but at the scale that's required for our urban living, gone.
What about education? Has education been lost in this as well? I mean, you learned from your mother.
Yep.
And from your parents and from your family. Yep. I did too. We kept a garden, all that sort of thing. Now, I'm not saying that, aren't we amazing? But I'm saying, has that been lost in this rush of self-indulgence and social media and so forth? Have we lost the ability to do these things?
I just think it's been commoditised, and it's now just kind of accepted that, we had to revere the food that was put on our plate. You're not leaving the kitchen table until you finish it.
Waste not, want not.
Because it was costly in relative terms to do that, both in terms of access and cost. $7.50 plus cost for an Uber. I'll do that, no problems. So whilst in one hand you can say costs are really, a burden to existing. On the other hand, we're quite happy to pay inordinate amounts for convenience.
Yeah. Well, that's the route we've gone down.
It's societal. If you said to, I've got 4 kids of my own, trying to get them to understand the value of food and how you're cooking, it's like, I just do this on my app, Dad, and I just get some a door in 10 minutes.
So we no longer, I think you're right, it's just about values and valuing things. And I reckon that this also starts, if it's not starting in families, if the conversation's not being had in families, then maybe it's something for the education system, at a sort of a wider, more holistic level.
Yeah, I do think there is a lot that we can learn from Indigenous societies around the world about how you should revere certain things. But the chase of the dollar, the chase of the power, the chase of control at the upper level has meant that it's really difficult for your run-of-the-mill person to actually have a reasonable lifestyle or existence.
Even just a reasonable one, even just the most basic one, actually. And what about the supermarkets themselves? I've looked at this over the years in the practices of supermarkets and have been given all sorts of information about their practices. They're so profitable. I know their margins, they talk about tight margins, but they're screwing suppliers. They maximise profit. And they have to, of course, they're a business, but it's the absolute extreme of capitalism, isn't it?
I don't know what an answer is, and because obviously every business, including my own, has to be profitable in order to survive and to continue.
Yeah, I'm not anti-profit.
Neither am I. We happen to be in the for-purpose, but we'll have to be profitable.
Yeah.
I just kind of think at what point should some sectors or organisations say, when's enough enough? What is enough? Because
sorry to be laughing, but it's so true.
I just think there's many sectors in our society that enough's never enough, irrespective of the impact elsewhere. So, great if a really, really profitable businesses. How about Sir Michael Jones? Sir Michael Jones. He's obviously the Village Trust. So he was asked once about why was he so tough on the football field, on the rugby field, the Iceman, and he kind of twinkle in his eye. He said, "It's much better to give than to receive."
Yeah, he's an extraordinary New Zealander.
So he's taken that into his life. My challenge is to those organisations and businesses and individuals who are extraordinarily wealthy and profitable. How about looking back and going, actually, what can I now do? What can I do to help in particular areas? I've got enough, and there's many, many individuals and companies in New Zealand have got more than enough for the rest of their life. What can you do to help?
And many of them are, a lot of them aren't.
Yep.
And you have to ask the question, at what level of profit, do you need to keep going further above that, which is what you were just saying then. And I look at some of this wealth, and it's actually absurd and extreme when you have other people living like this down here. And I don't know what the answer is to transfer that wealth to there, because I don't know what the answer is to get that wealth there. But there's got to be some answer somewhere.
I just think if we can find a mechanism of getting in front of individuals or letting individuals know the impact that they can have.
Yes.
Because I took a group of 40 when I was in the travel game through to the World Cup in following New Zealand football in 2010.
Oh, yeah.
And we took 350 kilograms of sporting gear.
Yes.
Went into a community, a township called Diepsloot in West Johannesburg.
Yeah.
The joy on the faces, the joy on the faces of those kids when they received this football gear. I would challenge anybody not to have that as one of the best feelings that you can get when you see the impact that you can have on an individual.
It's the best feeling.
Unbelievable.
It's the best feeling.
So I think we just, there's an onus on me and people in my position to try and get out there more and just go, what's your hotspot? And let me show you how you can have an impact.
What's the end result of a society like this if we don't get this right? Because I don't think we've got it right anywhere near it. So yours is almost an emergency service because
correct.
It was set up in an emergency.
Ambulance at the bottom of the cliff most of the time.
That's right. But we need to fix up here. So if we don't fix up there, and I don't see any solution to it under this lot. So if we don't, then what happens to society? Because in the end, you get an uprising. Potentially.
Well, I mean, I've been here. I'm a kilted Kiwi, Duncan.
Yeah.
I've been here 28 years now.
Yeah, Kiwi. Yeah, kilted Kiwi. Yeah.
She'll be all right, mate. She'll be all right.
Yeah.
You know, that general...
But that's what got us to this position now.
And it's kind of still there. What do you mean, Gavin? There's hunger in New Zealand. I get this quite often.
We're the most obese people in the world, and our kids are second or third, and we're second or third, aren't we?
Yeah. I just think that, you come back to education.
Yeah.
I think there's various degrees of education that we can do. Not shaming education, but just the reality of where we are now. Fantastic country in terms of producing some of the world's best food, and yet we've got people who can't put a ham sandwich on their table.
Yeah, well, but they can buy a phone.
Yeah, they can, and unfortunately, society that's how we communicate. That's how we engage. I used to go out and climb trees and play football and all the kids in the neighbourhood and do run around all over the place, no issues. My kids spend most of their time in their room on their phone scrolling InstaSnap or whatever it is.
What do you say to those people who criticise some of these families and say, oh, well, get them off the online gambling or get them off the pokies or, have a look at their lifestyle choices? Now, in some cases, there'll be some issues around there, but how do you find these families when they turn up? It's a legitimate claim, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean... In any walk of life, you're going to have those that are really, really challenging to help. But I've been around the country these last sort of 4 weeks visiting our food hubs, and many of them are doing wraparound services. And some of the stories I get are just incredible of where people have come, some of the backgrounds that they've had, and you actually do think, wow, you've come through that. But during that process and that time, sometimes in their minds, there's just no way out. So this is my life and this is how I've got to do it. And that's a real hard struggle to get through.
Last night in Point Chev, I'd just been to the supermarket to pick up 5 items, and I stuck to 5 items because I made sure I didn't put $20 in my pocket. And I came out, my son was with me, my 14-year-old boy, and we drove down to hang a left by the pub there and go up Point Chev Road. And I saw this old man, really bent over old man, coming around the corner. I've seen him before. And he opened up the rubbish bin and looked in there for food or whatever he was looking for, put it down and then carried on walking past the car. And I looked at my son and he looked at me and said, that look was, what can we do? And I said, what can we do? And he said, what do we do? And I said, and I drove the green light around the corner. I said, I don't know. I've been involved in this sort of thing before. I don't know anymore. What was I to do then?
I think if you can harken back to what we did in South Africa, if you can even change one person's life or help one person, when you can,
if you can, you should.
Yes, I think there's an obligation. I ask this question to many people, and ask it to you, Duncan. Now, 5 neighbours either side of where you live. Do you know them, and do you know them well?
I know the neighbours because I live in this apartment block at the moment. I know the people on the floor. I do actually. Yeah. In my old house, I knew the neighbours either side of me only. So,
would you say that's a
one
community?
of them was a gang member on home detention. That's I knew him because I went shopping for him.
Would you say that's a community?
No.
So we've lost that. We've lost that.
I grew up and we had a neighbourhood watch group in our place in Birkenhead, so it was what you call a dead end street or cul-de-sac. The Williams, the Coes, the Palmers. The Japanese family that we got on with right down the end there. There was the Robin. So we knew them all.
So you can name that now.
Yes.
Right?
And the Freemans next door.
And more so in rural, when I've been around the country, they're in the rural type environments, yes, they do have that bit more sense.
Yeah.
But 80% of our country lives in an urban environment. We've lost that. So you don't know if your neighbour two rows down is struggling for food.
We don't know.
You've got no idea.
But 45 years on from living there, I know those 7 houses around me. Still.
So coming back to what you said, what should we do?
Yeah.
Do something when you can. Don't turn a blind eye. Because believe you me, you never know when you're going to be in that situation.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, 1 being we're okay, where do you place us at the moment?
Oh boy. I mean, in certain areas we're at 9 and 10, and in certain areas we're in 1 and 2s. To be honest, we're fantastically well, doing really well on the world stage in certain areas. I think when we look at our own backyard and we actually dig beneath the surface, I just think a little bit of effort, and you know, I kind of do buy into some of the current government's mentality around government, community, and business.
No, I think it's
so. I think we've all got a place.
No, it's not. Look, it's not just for government.
It's not. We've all got a place, and where we can, what we're trying to do is work with our food donors, our businesses, to say to them, you know, fantastic, you're giving us your surplus. That is brilliant. How about looking at a small percentage of intentional giving, just for a period of time, and then if everybody does that, let's see where that gets us. Because if we can try and hand up instead of handing out a lot, then hopefully bit by bit we can transition. I liken kind of food insecurity for it to be brief, rare, and non-reoccurring. If
Is
we can
it
get
at
that
the moment
space,
brief for these people, or are they coming back all the time?
It's in and out and in and out. You might dip in and out, and it's if we can get to that space, you're never going to solve it. You're never going to be a Brunei of this world where you've got a leader that will insure every single person in his whole country, and there's other issues with that country.
They can.
As well.
It's always like a principality, isn't it?
It is. They can. It's never going to happen in that way. But if we can get to a space where there is the minimal understanding of what we can get to, that's where we're nowhere near there yet.
I used to consider us to be an egalitarian country, and there weren't there was wealth and there was poverty. You sort of knew, but it was kind of even the poor. They had a house, and even you could have one person going to work and you could survive.
When I came here to New Zealand,
It's gone.
I was flabbergasted that everybody had their own house.
Right.
I mean, this is only 28 years ago. You know, I'm driving down, I live in South Auckland, Babakura, and I'm kind of driving around. These are all houses on their own. It was for posh people where I was brought up. You know, we had big tenement blocks and flats and
Well, we're getting there.
and terraced houses.
Yes.
And that was, you know, the Kiwi lifestyle maybe in the 50s, 60s.
It was.
and
The state
70s.
house with a quarter acre.
And that was manageable, livable, and most now.
Exactly. So we've got this massive gap has opened up and continues to widen, I reckon. Even if you were just and look at all the research around and all the poverty settings, we haven't achieved what we wanted to. So despite the transfers that we make and everything, it's widened. And it continues to widen, and no one's come up with an answer. And until we do, the gap goes bigger.
I just think if you can, and certainly for us, if we can do our best in our area and our sphere and try and influence that as much as we can, I think we're helping towards the overall.
Do you think it's a stupid question? Do you think poverty can be solved?
It depends on what you mean by poverty, but my short answer is no, because nowhere in human history post I'll put this in quotes, civilization, has poverty never existed. In no country in the world, in no setting in the world, is what technical poverty, subsistence farming and subsistence existence. There is generally no such thing as poverty. They just live day to day, month to month, weather dependent. They generally have enough to eat, even though it's maybe low on what we would class as a nutritious scale. But there's only 10%, 15% of the world's population live like that. The rest live in urban environments where you can't access sufficient nutritious food.
A modern capitalist society is what, yeah,
but we can't go back. There's no way we can go back as a species to live in how we did a couple of 100,000 years ago.
Well, Trump's taken the tariffs back to 100 years. To 1905 levels.
I'll
pass on that.
Pass on and comment on that.
Hey, it's good talking
leader.
to you. It's good talking to you. It's really interesting. It's a really interesting area, food, because food is as crucial as oxygen.
It is, and we are a great food producing country.
Yeah.
We're fantastic at doing that. World leading in many, many cases.
Yeah, and in many ways it's been transformational what you've been able to do.
and we will continue bit by bit to do our best to try and close that gap.
Do you feel like you're more of a band-aid than a solution?
We've been a band-aid for the last sort of 5 years. We now need to have to transition into look, what can we do, as well as always needing to be there for those who need immediate support. What part can we play in trying to kind of make food more affordable, more accessible to those that really need that, so that then they're less likely to have to really worry about where their next meal comes from.
The greatest thing for you and the worst thing is you'll never get made redundant.
Yeah, I've
Sadly.
always said I'd love to do myself out of a job where there's no food surplus and no food need.
Yeah.
Never going to happen, but we just don't want it to be at the levels that it's currently at.
Yeah, good place to leave it, Gavin. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Garner.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, Garner.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Yeah, pretty stark, isn't it, when you're feeding 500,000 New Zealanders who can't feed themselves for all matter of reasons, and the reasons will be varied and different. Letters to the editor, Isaac. David White, there's one there.
Yes. Would you like me to read out this
Yeah,
first
go
one?
for it. Yeah, go for it.
Awesome, sweet. This is about the David White interview. Thank you and appreciate you reading it out. I really admire people like him. Oh, did we read out this guy's email?
Yes.
A couple episodes ago. Yeah, good. Nice.
Yes.
It was a lovely email. Appreciate your hard work too, and you have amazing support from Isaac. He has a great outlook on things and is very mature for someone so young. If our politicians had his wisdom. Good on you, mate. That's from Solomon. Good on you. Cheers, bro.
It's very humble of you saying so yourself.
I know, yeah.
Hey, Duncan, love your content. I'm a head chef at a cafe in South Auckland. Our scale in comparison to others is a lot larger than others. I deal with a multiple of food suppliers, such as Big Food and food chains, Service Foods and Gilmore's. As a relatively busy cafe on such a high scale, I have the capacity to have strong negotiations and create good competition. Just as a comparison, we pay 42 cents exclusive of GST for an egg. That's free range. A 6-pack of barn eggs at Woolworths, people are looking at 92 cents an egg. I have access to pricing of what a competitive hospitality business pays in comparison to the average Kiwi. If I can be of help, let me know. Thanks. Thanks, Jordan. I will. I think we should do some comparisons. I think we get him in, Isaac, and say,
Yeah, that'd be great.
are we being ripped off? He gets eggs at half the price of us ordinary guys, and he's a cafe owner.
Yeah.
We're being screwed. We're being
Very
stiff-armed, mate.
I'd be interested to know how many eggs he does buy at one go. You know, just like bulk prices, that kind of thing, and just ordering for a business, and you order like significantly higher quantities. It's obviously there's gonna be some price changes there, but yeah, still that's almost 50 cents to the dollar, which is pretty crazy.
We honestly we're idiots and fools with a laughing stock, I reckon. Of these grocery companies are just nailing us.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
That's us. Thank you so much for your feedback and your support. Get in touch through our social media at Duncan Garner Podcast on TikTok and Instagram, or flick me an email at duncan@rover.nz. To my team, Isaac, thank you, boss. Good man, sharp as ever. We'll do this all again tomorrow. Remember, life is no dress rehearsal, no curtain raiser, no nothing. This is it. And the Blues won as well. Let's see, that Blues beat the Blues won anyway. They beat the Hurricanes. God, Hurricanes can't be that bad, can they? This is it. We live in one of the best places on earth, so get out and enjoy it. Have a great rest of the day, folks. Take care, New Zealand. Ta-da.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.